Late.
Listening to that is the Conservative MP for Bassetlaw, Brendan Clarke-Smith. Brendan, good morning.
Morning, Toby.
Thanks for being with us this morning. I'm sure you saw Sir Patrick Vallance and Professor Chris Whitty yesterday. They said that the epidemic is doubling roughly every 7 days. What are things like in Bassetlaw?
We've been doing surprisingly well. The hospital admissions have been very, very low. Very slightly picked up recently, but we're well below the average in that sense. But as we know, these things can spike very, very quickly, so we want to avoid that.
I think it's important that we avoid that, isn't it? And I think most people would see that. There is a different viewpoint that says, well, are we avoiding it too much? Are we costing ourselves too much money? Where do you think our focus should be?
Well, this is the balancing act, Toby. I suppose the main thing is people's health, and we want to protect that. But then we've got to look at the wider economy as well. People want to be getting their operations done. People want to be going back to their jobs. They have their livelihoods. We want something left once this is all over. So it's about striking that balance. So obviously things change a little. The announcement that's coming today as well. We've had the thing about the pubs. So it's about striking that balance. We don't want the entire hospitality industry to close down again. They've suffered enough, I think. So there's a slight intervention and kind of a bit of a reminder for people, really, that this virus is still with us.
Do you know what? Honestly, whatever is announced, I will abide by. I'm not one of these people who will flout the law. First of all, I work for the BBC, so I shouldn't do. But anyway, I want to be able to look my kids in the face and say, at least I did what I was just told. Whether that was right or wrong, I don't know. But I really don't understand, Brendan, the curfew. I don't understand the thinking behind filling the streets of Sheffield with people who've been in separate pubs at 10 at the same time every night. I don't understand that. Stretching the public transport, stretching the taxis, just populating the places at 10 o'clock at night. I don't see the positives in it.
Yeah, I suppose there used to be a similar argument when they brought in the 24-hour licensing, and people used to get kicked out of pubs at 11 and so on. And I like a pint as much as anybody. I think part of the argument here is obviously the later people get on into their nights drinking, that the more likely there is to forget about some of the rules or not to distance or so on. This way they can still have their fun, they can still go out and so on. But also we're looking at things like table service, making that compulsory. So they already do that in Sweden quite successfully. I lived there for a couple of years myself, and it does work. So just again about reminding people without spoiling their fun, and without, obviously, we don't want to trash the economy while we're at it. So it's that balanced act between people's health and making sure businesses can carry on.
No, honestly, I think I've come from the other way. I think we'd be better off in the pubs because, like you say, the tables served, they're policed. There are door staff on there. We can control them in the pubs. We've got 60,000 students just polled up in Sheffield. If we chuck them out of the pubs at 10 o'clock at night, goodness knows where they're going to go and what they're going to be doing, and they're not going to just go to bed with a cocoa.
Yeah, I mean, we've all been, most of us students at various points the first couple of weeks. People do like to have a bit of fun. But, saying that, obviously, there's a difference between establishments where you're sitting down to have a meal and what you used to call vertical drinking establishments. People are supposed to be, sitting down anyway. We know most people are following the rules. People are using the track and trace. Some aren't, so it's a bit of a tightening up of that, really, and just a reminder.
You'd have to be, I mean, we talked about this yesterday. This track and trace where fines now can go to £10,000. If I'm feeling under the weather, I'm self-employed and I'm feeling under the weather. If I go and get a test and I'm positive, I can't go to work for 2 weeks, and if I do, I might get a £10,000 fine. I'm feeling under the weather. I don't get a test. 2 days later, I feel a bit better. I'm still positive. I've still got it, but I just go back to work. But I'm going to do that rather than risk the £10,000 fine, aren't I?
Well, I think most people are trying to be responsible. And obviously, those on lower incomes have introduced a scheme as well, whereby you can actually get a bit of a top-up to your income, especially those that are on universal credit. So we do realise that some people are going to have a problem with that. Obviously, if the disease spreads, that's going to have an impact on people's jobs as well. So I do get that it's difficult for people, but obviously most people have been very responsible, which we really appreciate. And obviously with the kids going back to school in the last couple of weeks as well, and my little one's just started school, there's lots of snuffles and colds everywhere, and people are probably worried they've got COVID when they haven't, and obviously that's had an impact on testing.
No, I get that. We've got much the same. Our house is now, same as everybody's house, is full of all sorts of sniffles and what have you. None of which, thank God, have been COVID, and we have had tests. Let's hear what Jonathan Ashworth had to say. And the Labour Party now are starting to get a little less. They're starting to get a little bit more challenging, aren't they? Jonathan Ashworth said the rapid spike in infections wasn't inevitable, but a consequence of the government's incompetence and failure to put in place an adequate testing system. I remember watching Keir Starmer's first PMQs, which everybody lambasted and said, well, he only has to ask one question all the way through, and he did. But what he forced out of the Prime Minister was a date, June the 10th, which is when we were going to have a test and trace system in place for. We still haven't got it. We're on September the 22nd. Has it been the incompetence? Is it the incompetence that's meant that people have died?
Well, I think it's one of these hindsight's a wonderful thing, and there's the Captain Hindsight, obviously nickname that's been going around. This virus, people are trying in different ways to deal with it all over the world. We won't know until after it's gone whether one way of dealing with it was better than the other one. And as I say, I'm sure looking back, there are some things that we do differently, but then other things that we've done very well. Things like the furlough scheme was very successful. Our rates, if you look at somewhere like Spain, which is going through the roof at the moment, whereas we've been fairly constant. And our main aim was not to overwhelm the NHS, and I think we've managed that.
Well, we did, because the money we spent on the Nightingale hospitals meant that none of them were actually really used that much, were they? But this isn't hindsight, is it? This is a Prime Minister standing up in the House of Commons and saying we will have a world-class test and trace system by June the 10th. And by 22nd of September, we still haven't got it. That's not hindsight, is it? That's just him not getting something right.
Well, I think when you do these things, you want to get them right, and you want to have the system up and running, and not having to go back and change it again. So obviously we've been introducing test and trace, various ways people can do it on the phone. People have been doing it in the pubs. NHS are launching some stuff this week as well. So that system is sort of in place in that sense, or it is being introduced. Obviously, test and trace isn't the only thing. It's also about people's behaviour. You can have the best test and trace system in the world, but if there's a spike or if people aren't following the instructions, then that's going to make things more difficult. So it's an effort really from everybody. I think people have done incredibly well. Obviously, in Sheffield, there's not the localised restrictions that there are in places like West Yorkshire. So, people have been doing very well with that, and I hope that we can stay out of it as well. So it's a number of things. It's not just about test and trace, I'd say.
The press this week are obviously setting us up now for Johnson to go, aren't they? I mean, the Sunday Times article was the beginning of us starting to think, the Prime Minister's had enough, and now there's photos being leaked which wouldn't normally have been leaked. The Daily Mail are starting to go against him. The talk radio, they were a bit more right-wing, are really against him now. Are you, as part of, you were part of the kind of taking down of the Red Wall, how concerned are you now about your Prime Minister? How much do you want Michael Gove in charge?
Well, I think the thing is, the Prime Minister's come with the programme, then COVID's come along. Obviously, he had a bad experience himself with that. He's become a new father. He's had a very busy year. And despite that, he's still going. So I think people forget that sometimes. I remember when I was a new father, how tiring it can be. But I think he's been doing a good job.
Well, he gets paid a hell of a lot of money for it, doesn't he? We've all been new fathers and not in anything like he is. But what we've got now is a pandemic that we've not dealt with. We've got the highest death rates in Europe. And we're in 3 weeks, in 3 months' time, we're going to come out of the EU with absolutely no looking like a deal at the moment. Actually, the things that he's had to do, he's not done.
Well, I think we will get that deal. I think there's a bit of brinkmanship, as there are with all negotiations. I mean, really, it's centring around fishing policy and state aid at the moment, which is where the Northern Ireland issue, I think, is coming as leverage with that. So there's a lot that goes on that people don't see. Obviously, we have a teaming government as well. I've got full confidence in the Prime Minister. I've been a very big supporter of him. He did help us take down the Red Wall and rebuild it as the Blue Wall, as we say. And we've been looking at infrastructure projects, all the plans and levelling up and so on, which are ambitious. But obviously we want to get that back on track. We've been looking at things like these shovel-ready projects. We want to build our way out of any potential recession. And if you look at the economy, it's recovering. So all I'd say is give us a bit of time. It's not even a year since the election. And the PM certainly, I think, is going to continue to do a great job, and he's got my support, certainly.
The economy is currently not recovering.
But that's fine. We're going to have a...
Yeah, we're not. Yeah. We currently know it's not recovering at the moment, but who knows where that's going to go.
Well, retailers shot up. I mean, we had some record sales recently as well. Obviously, people like B&Q are doing a great trade because people are doing a lot more work at home, which is something I'm particularly useless at, but I know others sort of enjoy. But the thing is, it's not like a normal recession. People do want to get back to work, but we'll obviously see when the furlough scheme ends, exactly how many of those jobs are retained.
Well, how do you think that's going to work out? Because the furlough scheme is looking like it's coming to an end now. That undoubtedly will have had I appreciate that B&Q have done well, but for example, Whitbread are cutting 6,000 jobs that they've announced this morning. I'm guessing they wouldn't have had to announce that if the furlough scheme wasn't coming to an end. But nobody's stopping in Premier Inns at the moment. And if you're one of the people who's lost a job in places like Pret or Marks and Spencer, you're not going to feel like the economy's on the up, are they? So do you think now's the time to get rid of the furlough scheme?
Well, it was always planned to end, and then obviously we extended that scheme. But what we've also done is we've said to employers, if you're going to bring members of staff back, then we're going to give you cash incentives to do that and to make it easier. But of course, when people are on furlough, a lot of the time they're only on 80% of their salaries as well. So they'll actually want to be able to go back to work. So this is why we're trying desperately not to lock down if we don't have to, because we really want to get back on track. An example, the licensed traders are saying we bring in this, some say curfew or some say we're taking the hours back a little bit. But we're doing that because we still want to support the industry, and we realise they've had a tough time as it is.
Thank you very much indeed for your time this morning. Much appreciated. That is the Conservative MP for Basildon, Brendan Clarke-Smith. It's Toby at breakfast. It's BBC Radio Sheffield.